we need to make sure that ERM are very mature, competent enough to do tracking. It's not just saying. I always believe in this thing called seeing is believing. If I say do this tracking, we also look at the risk. It is a high risk, low risk, medium risk. It is a high risk. Let's do it together to do a more regular monitoring and tracking for everybody. So it will not just be whatever that we say. I mean, let's put this in place. I think a lot of us, we know that the reason why a lot of times we say we never do actually for one simple reason. Everybody too busy with their work. You will agree with me. Everybody is so busy with their work. So if you don't have this practice in place, I think whether it's ERM, whatever you feel, but I'll take an ERM very seriously that they are the one that are looking at the trend. Okay, the landscape is changing. If you don't tighten this process as a whole, okay, we'll be losing out. So if you can build the competency of ERM, look at the thing together, and do the tracking, impact, different kind of levels of impact, the frequency of monitoring and tracking, I think we will have a more kind of, I call it more resilience, right?
Okay. Can I ask you a question? Yes. I know that this discussion was one that your organization had on a global basis after the 2014 attack. How was it decided?
I'm not responsible for cybersecurity.
Just to be serious, is that true for the security heads in Las Vegas and
Right
Macau?
now, basically, we have the global CISO reporting to the global CSO at the group level, and at the property level, the CISO reports to the CSO, which is myself,
Sorry, CTO meaning CIO.
CISO. Chief Security.
Sorry, you said who reports to the CSO? The
CISO. The CISO now reports to the CSO, the information security. He used to report to the CIO.
And what was the winning argument? Which one of the four arguments that you just made was the winner?
Two things. One is knowing the threats and the own vulnerabilities. And secondly, action. Who, as somebody said, who will stand up there and fight and deal with the incident and not be sucked in by technicalities. And because, well, I think I agree sometimes it's more about each organization. It can be unique to each organization. In my organization, for instance, security is responsible for crisis management and BCC as well. So we have that, my team and I have that responsibility to make sure that we are always ready for crisis, always ready to be able to find alternatives and so on and so forth to bring the business back to normalcy as quickly as possible. So because of the role that we have in crisis management BCP, it became very natural for us now also to look at how do we manage the cyber attack incident.
Help me out. Help us all out. When you got this new responsibility, what did you do? Tell us something that you did differently that you weren't doing before.
I got to understand what firewalls are all about.
Really?
That's
Well, that's
exactly,
what everybody in the room is afraid
exactly.
of.
In today's context, all of us cannot be afraid of IT. Right? We have to embrace IT. It's a question of how far you can. And I will argue that the CISO or the CSO do not need to go very deep dive to understand what cybersecurity is all about. But you need, yes, I'm not saying that the CSO now don't have to depend on the CISO or the IT security analyst. No, you still need that group of people. But as you go up, right, where does the responsibility end? We can say it's ERM. Today I will argue where is ERM, right? I will argue that the organization CEO himself should be the head of CRM, right? So if he is the head of CRM, who is going to be the head of security? It cannot be him as well, right? So therefore, I'd rather invest in my head of security to say now your responsibility lies in physical, personnel, as well as data security.
I think we cannot use one incident where the CIO failed his duty, right? Because it's a case of such.
Oh, I think we can all be But the question, I live in Minnesota. The headquarters of Target Corporation is in Minnesota. When they had their 100 million credit card breach 2 years ago, I believe it was front page news where I live, right? And the woman who was the CIO lost her job over it, right? You can imagine that internally they must have had this same discussion. I have no idea what the result was. There were plenty of failures. There have been plenty of failures in IT breaches. Somebody, you would argue that somebody must be responsible. The question is, did the organization structure change? That is, the monitoring structure, looking at the horizon, or the response structure change as a result of that? And I think it's interesting that a large, visible public company in the United States made the decision, no, this should be part of the practice of managing security as opposed to the practice of managing our assets, right? Right? I agree with you. The digital assets are the company's crown jewels, and in many cases, they are the company, right? If you're a stock exchange like SGF, what's the business? The business is the box that makes the transaction. I think it's interesting that that a large company made that decision, and so you're saying that the major change that you had to make, and presumably this also is true for your staff, is learning more about IT. Is that correct? How did you go about doing it?
Learning.
Call up the CIO. Can you give me a briefing on firewall?
And I think it's not just about learning about IT security. It's about building a strong IT security. Because it is not building an IT team. It's building a strong IT security.
Fair enough.
So now I'm responsible for finding my BCC. Alright, somebody would have to be technically qualified, technically competent. He may report to me, but it doesn't mean that
You have to know
I
that.
have to know everything.
You
So
don't have to be
my
a
job
plumber.
now is to make sure that we have a strong IT security. That my cyber SOC is adequately staffed and has the right tools and the right incident response. I will read all the reports and I'll start asking questions. Why? Something has gone wrong, right? Is there follow through? Right? So these are things that you start to learn as well. Similarly at the group level, at the sense level, at the LBSC level, the global CISO has to, but the CSO now has to make sure that it hires the right global CISO and build the right cybersecurity.
Was there any impact on careers at the Las Vegas Sands as a result of that breach?
I prefer not.
Meaning their work.
There were changes, of course, there were changes. But it is more than just the incident.
Yeah, sure.
It depends on the organization's stage of development at the time. And as you grow, you would change your organization structure depending on where your focus is.
In the final analysis, the person ultimately responsible for security of the company is the CEO. So depending on the nature of the incident, the nature of the business, nature of the state of security in that vicinity that is working, then the CEO has to make a decision where the CISO will report to, right? Yeah. If it's very important, the CISO
Sure. Do you
can
see the CISO
report to
as
CEO.
being a different reporting decision from the CIO?
Yeah.
The two
Yes,
different people.
Some of the organization in US, the CISO is already reporting to the CEO. In fact, you look in Google and see quite a number of organizations already put the CISO now. It's something like the evolution of CIO. The CIO used to be back, move to the front.
And I got the impression from your remarks that you, because of your experience in your career, you're extremely sensitive to the idea of the CIO, the chief technical guy, person, finally got on management's agenda, right?
Yeah.
Finally get in front of management, and you don't want to do anything that diminishes that. Do you see Wong's problem of getting ERM in front of senior management as being effectively the same problem 20 or 30 years later, trying to get management to pay attention to a whole world?
ERM don't have that faith because ERM only started in the last few years. And only ERM is so prevalent in Singapore is because of SGX requirement. And because all listed companies have to have an ERM. Yeah. In
Do you disagree with that?
I think it's okay. This one, as a result of the fraud and all this effort management, and also the corporate responsibility, right? The corporate governance responsibility of the board of directors. That's why they started the ERM function. But whether ERM didn't move from anywhere. It just came out, right? It was at the back and then pulled up to the front. What I'm saying now is the CISO now, perhaps from the back, should now move to the front and report to the CEO.
And you presumably think the CISO should be part of whatever the ERM function is?
Sit together with the CIO.
Do you see a CISO being the head of ERM?
Head of ERM, I don't think he's interested.
The line of the night.
I have one question. How frequently, because you all are telling that this security is important and all three should work together, how frequently all these three functions communicate and talk to each other? I want to ask them in reality. How frequently does an ERM give, okay, these are the, I have done some analysis, this is I'm giving to. So CIO takes decision on things. So I'm just asking, it's for
You want
everybody.
them to answer individually?
Yeah. So how frequently does the communication actually happen?
Well, Professor Xiao, you from your previous hands-on active management experience, how often did you talk to the security guy?
The question assumed that all three are on an equal footing. And all communicate. But in many organizations,
Security was not most important.
the head security is quite down, in the command chain, Yeah. So ERM, they consider as a nuisance. Form filling. So
We're trying not to speak insults here.
don't forget, I'll say on ERM.
No wonder you quit.
So I think we would all agree that
We don't talk, actually.
that one of the issues is how is IT or how is security viewed in your organization? And I think it's quite reasonable. One of you made the remark about, was it you made the remark about guards looking in the bag and having no idea what was in it? I agree with that, right? I think PK's point would be, you can't look at a disk drive. The TSA in the United States, we spent $1 trillion training people who used to work at the post office to open your bag at the airport and to stare at your laptop, having absolutely no idea what's there. That's not IT security. That's not physical security either. But I think you could argue that when you go into a secure facility, do you have a camera in here? Do you have a phone in here? Do you have a USB drive? And I'm sorry, those are just not allowed in. I can teach almost anybody to keep that out. And that would, I argue, be both security and IT security that you can teach to a low-level person. PK would argue, you just train the guy to do the wrong thing. You train a monkey to do this, the monkey's going to do this. If you train a security guard to look for water bottles or knitting needles, I mean, that's what they're going to take out and what they're going to look for, right? I think that I'm hearing from Alex, security as a physical was well down the organization that organizations he worked for. Would you say that IT security has been elevated within the SANS organization as a result of this new reporting structure, or not?
IT security has been elevated in most organizations. We are not peculiar, we are not. Alright, you look at the situation in every company. I just want to comment the point about communication among the three groups. It's precisely because in real life, people don't talk to each other that much. So do you put security under one roof, or do you put the security under different teams and then they don't talk?
I have a question for PK. You mentioned you have cyber-SOC and SANS, for example. So, those are the big hacking incidents, but the daily alerts that come from the cyber-SOC, who deals with that in your organization? And where's the role of the CIO in this?
The CISO looks at it. Right?
Yeah. And is the CIO involved in the day-to-day?
Not in the day-to-day.
of significance, then
Yeah,
you
raise
need
up.
to use.
That's why there's a crisis management team
Okay.
to be elevated.
I see. So CIO is already out of the equation. Okay.
Maybe let me
Please.
Okay, to answer his question, I think what we hear is that ERM is actually not nonsense. Why you want us nonsense? Because we are trying to put things together. When we're trying to put things together, people say you are nonsense. So.
No, I said not nonsense, nuisance.
No, it's important also to say that now, when the ERM trying to put things together, in fact, like what I mentioned, enterprise risk management, if we do it properly, we also look at where the level of risk. Is it severe or whatever? Now, when they ask me about frequency of meeting, I will say that I'll look at the impact of it now. I believe that every quarter we have management meeting. That's where the ERM can put things together. Okay, let's put it up. These are the civility. Every quarter we need to meet, we need to talk now. In BCC, we always say, or at the prime, we always say, when there's any significant changes, and that's where the enterprise, where they get the things together, like you mentioned about where something escalated up, incident response to the CISO. Now, who will report to the management? If this thing can be escalated up, enterprise risk management will look at what are the impact, the dependencies, and so on. Then it can actually escalate up to the management. So I think I look at the kind of frequency, look at the kind of impacts, the kind of frequency, and the kind of reporting on how to report up and so on. Yes, so we're no longer nuisance.
I would just like to clarify. The
Yeah.
reason I asked this question is,
Yeah.
to be honest, I agree. What happens is ERM does a fantastic job, okay? But it is never cascaded to the right functions across it. And I would say that it is happening at the moment across organizations.
I want to differ on this thing because I think now, as we mentioned, that ERM seems to be something very new coming up. But I think that because we need to put things together, now we look at all the risks are coming up, we need to put things together. Now, whether we put it in a proper manner, whether we put it in training right manner, so on, I think we really need time to fine-tune it so that we can actually be more prepared, more resilient.
So whatever you prepare, generally it's very good, and then it becomes a final presentation for the board. That's the only thing it ends up as an end result. So that is what I have seen it happening across functions. So that's why the question came, that how frequently all three functions talk to each other and communicate.
Sure. I want to highlight one more point is that enterprise risk management, you can see that BCM, IT security, they are moving toward the enterprise risk management because they look at totality. Now we talk about crisis management, incident response today. When something happened, okay, a major incident happened, who is actually going to face the crisis management, the incident management, the media management, and social media management today? So someone needs to take the lead to manage. Do you want a CISO or security guy to take the lead in social media, the crisis management? Today you realize that ECM is also changing. They are taking the role of crisis management, social media management, incident management. So the tech now is that, how are we moving towards that? So now if we had a process, we move it along the way, I think we will be having ERM, BCM, incident response, crisis response, cybersecurity response. So now it's a matter of
Okay, sure. You first.
So since there are certain people in the crowd who are questioning the existence of ERM, and for sure I'm actually with ERM as far as is concerned, how would you be able to help someone elevate the profile of ERM in your organization?
But I think the ERM very important. I think it's about awareness, competency, and so on. How much do we know in the industry? That's why I think in the industry, all these events coming up, the risk, the threat, and so on. Where are we taking all these knowledges and so on? So how can we actually get to move along it? We need management support, and we need to talk. So what we can say today is that we are not talking. We are not talking. So if we can put everybody to talk together, I think we can actually bring this to a higher kind of awareness and so on. It's about coordination, it's about teamwork.